University of Texas, as you know, has a very rich and deep tradition of excellence in research and education relating to national defense. It's a tradition that is alive and well today, and indeed it is soaring, and that's in no small part thanks to the leadership of our president, Dr. Greg Fenves. Dr. Fenves is a national leader in higher education, but from our point of view, what's special about him is his deep understanding of the complexities and importance of the challenges of national defense and the support he extends to our programs. We're very grateful for that leadership, and I am very honored to turn the podium over to him now. Dr. Fenves.
Thank you, Bobby. It's an honor to be here today with the Midshipmen and the Cadets of the ROTC programs at the University of Texas. Let's give you all a round of applause. I had the pleasure of having lunch with just a few of you a couple weeks ago. I was just so impressed with your dedication to your studies and your dedication to service to our country. Today's event has been made possible by several organizations on campus that I would like to recognize. First of all, the ROTC program, so thank you for the leadership of ROTC, the Clement Center for National Security, and the Strauss Center for International Security and Law. I have the privilege today to introduce today's guest speaker, the United States Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter. Secretary Carter has spent more than 3 decades leveraging his knowledge of science and technology, global strategy and policy, as well as his deep dedication to the men and women of the Defense Department to make our nation and the world a safer place. He has directly and indirectly served 11 other Secretaries of Defense in both Democratic and Republican administrations. For his government service, Secretary Carter has been awarded the Department of Defense Distinguished Service Medal, the highest on 5 separate occasions. Outside of his government service, Secretary Carter was most recently a distinguished visiting fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution and has been a lecturer at Stanford's Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies. The Secretary earned his bachelor's degree in physics and medieval studies, that's really interdisciplinary studies, at Yale University, and his PhD in theoretical physics from Oxford University, where he was a Rhodes Scholar. We are honored to have him on our campus today. Please welcome the Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter.
Thank you, President Fenves. Wonderful, wonderful audience. Those of you who are with us already, thank you. Those of you who aren't yet with us, I'm here to get you. That's one of the reasons I'm here. What a magnificent institution, UT. And I want to thank President Fenves. Long before he assumed the leadership of this great public university, was an accomplished technologist and engineer. All the students here who joined us today, thank you for your engagement, for your interest in subjects that matter to your future and our security. This morning I met with my longtime friend Bill McCraven, your Chancellor, who, as you probably know, was once a 4-star admiral and a great colleague of mine and our commander of Special Operations Command. Bill's one of his generation's most influential officers. In some ways, you could say it was his innovative spirit and his enduring commitment to service that embodies not just the best of our military, but also this great university. And of course, 2 years ago, Bill gave a commencement address heard around the world. He proudly proclaimed his university's motto in that address, and no, I'm not talking about the make your bed part. I'm talking about how he said what starts here changes the world. And just by being on campus this morning, I've seen some of what you're doing to make that a reality. After my visit with Bill, I stopped over at UT's School of Social Work. And there I met a really impressive group of researchers who are tackling something that's important to us. I just mentioned it to you. I was very impressed with the work there, and that's the scourge of sexual assault. which is, on university campuses, it's particularly offensive to us in the profession of arms, and we're determined to beat it. But I learned a lot, had an excellent exchange of information and ideas, and I'm grateful to the people I was with earlier this morning. And there's a point also in that, which is whether you are members of a prestigious university like this, or a proud and noble institution like our Department of Defense, we do encounter similar challenges. And we should share a common commitment, which is to create an environment where everybody's treated with the dignity and respect they deserve, and we can get the best out of people. Now, additionally, later this afternoon, I'll visit an advanced computing center and tour a laboratory where scientists and engineers are making advances in neuromuscular robotics and advanced data sciences and other fields. So just in one day, I'm seeing how determined people here are at UT to think differently and deliver solutions to some of our most complex challenges. Every day, we're challenging ourselves to do the same in the Department of Defense. We have to, given the complex and multiple threats we face. Not just ISIL, which we will defeat, but also North Korea, which is among other things firing ballistic missiles, Russia, among other things illegally annexing Crimea, China, attempting to change the calculus in the South China Sea, and Iran continuing to export malign influence. We need the best talent America has to offer to meet these challenges and carry forward our responsibilities. And as Secretary of Defense, I have the privilege of leading the finest fighting force the world has ever known. But that's not a birthright. It's not a guarantee. We have to earn it again and again. And I have to pass it on to those who come after me so they have the same privilege that I have. And to ensure that that force of tomorrow remains as great as the force of today, we in the Pentagon are needing to think, as I tell our folks, outside of our five-sided box about the kinds of the solutions and the kinds of careers and the kinds of challenges and the kinds of opportunities that will make the very best, like those represented in this room, continue to join our great institution. And I'm proud that so many of you sitting in front of me have already made a decision to be part of this enterprise, which to me is the noblest thing you can do. To the large number of our ROTC cadets with us today, I look forward to welcoming you as members of the Department of Defense community. What you've chosen is consequential. It makes a great difference, helping to defend one's country and build a better world. There's nothing better to wake up to than being part of that mission. And pretty soon, you'll be assuming the awesome responsibilities of leadership. The responsibility of ensuring that our citizens, as well as men and women across the world, have the security they need to dream their dreams, raise their families, live lives that are full. That's what it's all about. Whether you're part of ROTC or not, whether you're a senior or a sophomore, you might be wondering about the world you'll be entering into. And there's no question about it. You're living during a time of incredible change and challenge in a lot of parts of the world. Every time you turn on the television or surf the internet, it seems to be some new reason to be apprehensive about the world that awaits you. When you see the kind of horrendous attacks ISIL carried out in Brussels, you might ask yourself, what can you do? I hope you ask yourself, what can you do? How can you make a difference? How can you be part of something bigger than yourself? And it's a world of opportunities too, wonderful, bright opportunities to leave a better world for future generations. Now I admit, I didn't actually think much about national security when I was where you are. I was all wrapped up in physics, history, separately, by the way. Although the joke people make about me is that I'm now living the perfect marriage of physics and medieval things. Sports, but that changed a few years later when I listened to a speech about the future of technology in the military. It helped me realize that I could make a difference, that I knew something, I could make a difference, and that it would be in something of great consequence. Those of you who are in ROTC are preparing to become great warriors, but like all students here today, you're also scientists, thinkers, programmers, writers, mathematicians, social scientists, much, much more. And every day, each of you helps to crack the code in some way, and we need to keep you doing so that America retains its great strength as an incubator of ideas and innovation, because that, second only to our people, is what makes our military the greatest. For those of you who won't be going into the military, but may want to advance our mission and keep our nation secure, we're continuing to find additional opportunities for you to do so, for you to make a contribution. 1 year and 1 day ago, barely a month after I became Secretary of Defense, I went back to my old high school in Philadelphia, and I laid out my commitment to this building of the force of the future, as I call it, the all-volunteer force, because that's what we have, that will defend our country in future generations. Part of the reforms and the investments we're making in that Force of the Future initiative involve finding ways for more of our citizens, including students like you, either in uniform or in some other way, to contribute to our mission. In fact, a critical part of building the Force of the Future starts with what we're doing for students like you, to improve and enhance our internship programs, to make them more effective at transitioning promising interns into productive professionals at the Department of Defense. That's how we get good people in, get them to give us a try. And when they do that, many of them find that the meaning of being part of our mission is something that I found not too much older than you were, that I couldn't resist being a part of. Now, as part of that, we're also bringing in more of America's best and most innovative minds. And that's why we created the Defense Digital Service, to bring in expertise from America's technology community, just to work for a specific time on a specific project. Give it a try. Maybe some of the computer science majors here can come on board for a few months or for a few specific projects. Perhaps they can even wear a hoodie, like Chris Lynch is here. Chris, where are you? The director of the Defense Digital Service. Where are you, Chris? That's Chris back there. The only person in the Pentagon who wears a hoodie every day. But he runs our Defense Digital Service, which is just what it says, which is people like Chris who are able to come in and work for a time. And that's okay, even if they only come in for a time and then go out again, and then maybe come back in again. It's a tremendous source for us of fresh ideas, and for them, it's a tremendous opportunity to contribute to this great mission. As we've introduced reforms and investments to build this force of the future, we're always also mindful of the fact that we are different. We are the profession of arms, we're not a business. We're responsible for defending this country, providing the security that allows everyone else, all of you and your parents and your friends and your fellow citizens, to go to school, to go to work, and one day provide a better future for the next generation. While the military cannot and should not replicate all aspects of the private sector, we can and should and are borrowing practices, technologies, and management techniques that work for us, so that in future generations we'll keep attracting people of the same high caliber we have today. People who meet the same high standards of performance and ethics and honor and trust we hold our force to today. We're making these investments and pushing forward with these reforms for one simple reason, so that the force of tomorrow can remain as strong as the force of today. And to make that possible, we need more talented and dedicated people like you. Men and women who are committed to making creative and lasting contributions to our national defense. The opportunities you have here at the University of Texas, those opportunities will soon become your obligations. In a short period of time, you'll have to put your talents and your skills to a productive and practical use and I have complete confidence in your ability to make the most of your world-class education here. In fact, there may be a future Bill McCraven among the ROTC candidates here in the audience, or a Nobel Prize-winning scientist, perhaps even a future Secretary of Defense. Wherever your career takes you, though, I'm confident you'll be driven by the desire to be something larger than yourself. That's where the call to service begins, and it's my great hope that each and every one of you, in some way or another, will seek it out. It's been a privilege to be here on this campus, to be among you now, get a little chance to chat with you now and hear your questions. But I'm looking at the eyes out there, and I'm hoping that I'm going to, some people are maybe even today, maybe even just as a consequence of this encounter today, will tip you over. Give us a try in one way or another. I guarantee you'll find it one of the most rewarding things you can do with the wonderful lives that you all have ahead of yourselves.
So much, Mr. Secretary, for those remarks. As Bobby Chesney mentioned earlier, I'm Will Inboden. I'm the director of the Clements Center, one of your hosts today. I'm also a professor at the LBJ School of Public Affairs, one of our sponsoring organizations. I'm going to introduce our two students here who are going to engage in a conversation with the Secretary for a little bit. First, we've got Cadet Chris Roman. He's a senior in the Texas Army ROTC program. He's majoring in government, shout out to the government department, and was recently selected for active duty as a military intelligence officer with an infantry branch detail. And so he'll soon be serving under Secretary Carter's chain of command. We also have Anna Waterfield. She's a master's in global policy studies student at the LBJ School, focusing on security. Before arriving here, she served 2 years in the Peace Corps in Tanzania, and she did her undergraduate at American University in Washington. Mr. Secretary, I should also tell you that when Anna graduates in May, she's just taken a job with the House Armed Services Committee under Chairman Thornberry, so this might not be the last time she's putting questions to you. So anyway,
he, by the way, is a great, obviously from this state, but in that great tradition of statesmanship and civility, fantastic chairman.
Yes, and he's also a UT alum, so okay, yeah. All right, so over to you.
Well, first, I just have to say what an honor it is to be on stage with you, so thank you so much for being here. My first question is, as a policymaker, how do you draw on lessons learned from history to inform decisions you're making today, especially since we live in such a highly dynamic world?
Well, it's a good question, and since some of you are scientists, some are social scientists, you say to yourself, what have I done that I've learned here in the university that bears upon problem solving? Overwhelmingly practical people in the real world, and all of us more or less in our everyday lives, are our principal way of reasoning. We may use other theories and so forth that we learned about in school, but our principal way of reasoning is to say, what is this like that I've seen before, or that I've read about before? And presidents do that, heads of state do that, and so it's very important to be able to do that. It's also important that you do that in a disciplined way, because a lot of the ways we remember history aren't actually the way it happened. And it's a version that later seemed convenient to believe, but wasn't really the way it is. So I find it's very important to, if you come to be this way, and you can't take for granted what you read about it. Our culture, being so innovative, being so dynamic, does not have a long memory. And you have to dig back and find out why is it really that it's this way. And last thing on that, a very good point, Anna, a lot of the people that you're dealing with around the world, they remember their history even if you don't. And so if you're going to connect with them, and you're going to bring them your way, or alternatively, if you're going to defeat them, if they fall into that category, it's a good idea to make them know what ticks. And they, like we, are conditioned by where we came from. So it's a critical discipline. But it's just one among many. You have social scientists here, so your school of social work, you have scientists, lots of things. But history, probably the number one for most people.
Sir, I'd like to second what Anna said and say what an honor it is to be here. I have a question about cyber warfare. Due to the increasingly cyber-connected nature of our modern warfare systems and their susceptibility to cyber attack, how are we training to fight and win on a cyber-degraded battlefield? And do you think there's a potential risk of losing some of our conventional skill sets in the process?
Yeah, well, there's definitely that risk, and we're determined not to let it happen. And so it's a big priority of ours. We're making huge investments in cyber. And the reason is very simple. It's exactly as you said. There's no point in us having all the planes and tanks and ships and soldiers and everything else in today's world unless they're connected. That's not only the way our systems work and how you have excellence in the modern world, but it's how our people work. That's how you think, that's how your upbringing is different from mine. You've lived with this, and you're not going to accept anything less in your professional life. If your profession is the military profession, you're going to want to expect that. So we've got to be good at it. And job one for our cyber warriors is defense of our own networks. That's job one. We do other things too. We help civil society defend itself. We do offense. But job one is to defend our own networks. And the last thing I'll say is it's not really a money issue. We are making big investments in it, but it's not that isn't our principal rate limiter and how we improve ourselves. It's people. It's good people. And I'll just tell you, getting people like you to join up your generation and your level of technical skill, huge priority for me. And by the way, we have people in our guard and reserve component also, who all week are network defenders for some of the biggest and best companies, and then come during drill time and defend our networks. This is just one of the ways where it's so important for us in the Defense Department to retain a connection to and access to what's best and most innovative in our society. We can't take that for granted anymore because my grandfather's generation, they all went to World War II. But fewer people are in the military now. I love the people who are, but the reality is there are lots who aren't. I need to stay connected with them because we need to be the best in those fields that are so essential to success on the battlefield.
Thank you, sir. That's really interesting. So the Islamic State is clearly very prominent in the media. In your speech, you listed a few of the other threats that are really big in the national security discourse. I was wondering what you think are some emerging threats that we aren't paying attention to but should.
The big five are the ones I named that are there right in front of our face. ISIL, which we really have to finish off. We're going to finish off. Iran and North Korea have been around for a long time, so they're not new, but they're still out there every day. We talk about fight tonight on the Korean Peninsula. It's not that we want to do that. We have to be ready to do that, and that's been going on, as Admiral Linden knows, for decades and decades now. In terms of emerging, I'd say two things. Two places that I put on our worry list, but not because I think conflict with them is inevitable or desirable, but because you don't get anything for free in this world. You got to work on it. And they're Russia and China. So if you're looking for two things to watch, those are two. Let me say why. In the case of Russia, for 25 years after the Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union collapsed. Russia and the United States and the West pretty much got along. We don't always see things the same way, but countries don't. And there wasn't conflict and there wasn't behavior by Russia that was concerning in the way that more recently the annexation of Crimea, the little green men business in eastern Ukraine. And so we're finding that in order to make sure that the European security order remains as good as it's been for the last 25 years, we're having to take actions. Now, they're not actions that we want to have lead to war, but they're actions that bolster strength and make it clear that anybody who picks a fight with the United States is going to regret doing so. Another one is China. Again, not a place we want to have a war with, not a place that we have a history of war with. But it is one of the key powers of the Asia Pacific, we being another one. And the Asia Pacific is where half of humanity lives and half of the population of the world's economic activity. So it's the single part of the world of most consequence to your future. Now and why is, you don't read about that in the headlines, right? It's not, why is that? The critical ingredient of that has been the American military role, going way back to World War II. So that's very important for us to keep up as well. So I'd say those two are, in terms of things that if they went wrong would be of major significance. And even though they're not in the newspapers, part of my job is to make sure they're getting in the newspapers. That's important. And then I think the last thing I'd say, Anna, is yes, we will defeat ISIL, no doubt about it. But I think those of us who are charged with maintaining human security have to recognize that technology is putting destructive power into the hands of smaller and smaller groups of people all the time. So dealing with that is going to be part of our future. So as I think about our technological future, I think about our force structure, our training, everything. I know that's going to be part of the portfolio. Not ISIL, because we're going to get rid of that. But after that, I don't know in what form, I don't know where, I don't know when, but for certain, those of us who deal with security are going to find it necessary to deal with that kind of threat, and we need to be one step ahead and make sure that we're strong.
Thank you, sir. So, sort of continuing on the same line of foreign policy, with some of the fighting in the Middle East along ethno-sectarian lines increasing, specifically in Iraq and Syria, and the border between those two countries collapsing, in the next couple of decades, do you see a possibility for state lines being redrawn? And if so, I have an idea what that would look like.
Well, it's not, I'll tell you, that's not desirable. I'll tell you why. Once states start falling apart, it may not have been an ideal configuration way back 100 years ago when it was set up that way. But in the example of Iraq, we're basically backing the concept of a multi-sectarian integral Iraqi state as the best alternative to what could happen, which is disintegration, chaos, ethnic cleansing, and we all know what lies down that road. We've gotten a taste of it. Now, that's tough to pull off, and the Prime Minister of Iraq is trying to pull it off. The Prime Minister Abadi, I talk to him all the time, very able guy, and I think wants to do that. But it's tough because he has Shiites, he has Sunnis, and he has Kurds. And he has to, therefore, as he puts it, have a decentralized approach to keeping the Iraqi state together. But letting it fly apart, there's danger down there, right? Syria, even more complicated situation because there's been a civil war going on there for 5 years. And what we want in the Syrian civil war, now ISIL is a separate thing. We're going to destroy ISIL in both Syria and Iraq, and we're doing that now. But one of the things that gave birth to ISIL was, the principal thing really, was the civil war in Syria. And that is between a large fraction of its population and the government of Assad. That, there has to be some end to that civil war and a political resolution there. I think, once again, the solution that is going to be best in the long run is one that keeps the Syrian state together. Assad moves aside. The structures of the state, which after all undergird everything, you know, policing, fire protection, education, water, electricity. Human beings need these things. You need some structure of governance there. So these are not ideal. These lines were drawn by colonialists, European colonialists, many decades ago. In some ways, they lump together people who don't naturally get along, and that's awkward. So you have to acknowledge all of that. But the alternative, which is everybody go their own way, that's going to create a lot of misery in those societies, and then a lot of spin-off for us as we have to protect ourselves from all the debris of the disintegration.
We've got time for just a couple of questions.
Secretary Carter, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Jake Barnett. I'm an undergraduate fellow at the Clements Center. So you mentioned the threat that China and Russia pose to the global order, and both of these countries historically view themselves as victims of Western aggression. So how does the United States avoid having a security dilemma in the South Pacific or in Eastern Europe, where our attempts to secure our partners are viewed as hostile actions? So I guess, how do you find the balance between both securing our allies and ensuring that the dialogue?
Well, it's a very good question, because important as it is to be strong and to stand for principles like freedom of navigation, like the integrity of the borders of nation states, you don't just cross, you don't just take territory, and so forth. So we need to stand strong, and we will. But it's also important to continue to keep the door open to what is the future that we'd like to have with both of those countries. I mean, the world's got enough problems without some of the largest powers being at each other. And so we do, and I do, always try to put those two thoughts together. Listen, we're going to stick up for ourselves and our friends and our allies and our principles, but we're not out to get you either. That's not the American approach to security. The American approach to security has not been our way or the highway. And my evidence for that, you say, well, that's fine, you're an American, you say that. My evidence for that is this: we have all the friends and allies. Why is that? Why is that? It's because they like working with us. They like what we stand for. They find our military very capable and competent, and they conduct themselves very well. And that's very attractive. And we don't have any competition in that regard. Those other countries don't have the friends that we have. And to me, that speaks for the American approach, which is we try to create a world in which everybody can follow their own dreams. And we're not trying to tell them which way to go, but there are some principles that everybody benefits from. And I think it speaks volumes that we have as many friends and allies with us who join us in that enterprise, that we work with every day on security problems around the world. Huge coalition against ISIL. A big group of countries works with us in Afghanistan. NATO alliance, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Philippines, lots of countries wanting to work with us now. Vietnam, for example, which, needless to say, we didn't have an uncomplicated history with. So we stand for something, and it's important to continue to stand for that, but it's also important to emphasize to those whose behavior is challenging, hey, look, nobody's out to get you here, but we have to stand tall when it comes to our principles and our friends, never mind our own selves.
A question from one of our cadets. Here we go.
Sir, Cadet Wright, Air Force ROTC. My question for you is, you mentioned how we're going to defeat ISIL, and what I was curious about is whether or not you had some specific criteria that needs to be met before you're satisfied that we're mission complete in the elimination of ISIL.
Yeah, I do. It takes the following things. First and foremost, and absolutely necessary but not sufficient, is to defeat them in Syria and Iraq. And that means a number of things, but importantly, it means taking away from them the cities of Raqqa in Syria and Mosul in Iraq, and thereby making it plain to all that there is not going to be a state based upon this ideology. So that is necessary. It's not going to be sufficient. By the way, that needs to be followed by, to get back to an earlier question, governance there that can keep terrorism defeated. We can enable the defeat of terrorism, but somebody's got to govern the situation afterwards. That's a whole other challenge. We're working on that too. But we also know, second, that ISIL has, I talk about like a cancer, has metastasized, pops up a little bit in Afghanistan, a little bit in Libya, a little bit here, and we're going to need to defeat it in those places as well. Each of them is a somewhat different context and a different history. We get back to an earlier question, but we got to go after them too. And then finally, we have to protect our own country, both from possibility of attacks that are directed by the outside, or simply inspired in somebody who's lost their way and looking at the internet, and that happens. And we need to protect ourselves against that as well. Now, I'm confident we can do all that, and we're going to do all that, in addition to everything else we need to do to protect ourselves. We're that good, we will do it. But it's going to take a lot of effort, and we're looking every day to do more, because we want to accelerate that process, particularly the defeat of ISIL in Syria and Iraq.
All right, well, the Secretary has a busy schedule today, so please stand and join me in a warm round of applause.
Thank you.